The student role is different because it's less passive. That's really how Redbridge is designed. We're designing the school so that students are active participants in their own learning.
This is the Education Crisis, what it is and how to fix it. I'm your host, Tembi Duncan. This series features renowned education expert Dr. Charles Reigeluth, author of the book Vision and Action: Reinventing Schools Through Personalized, Competency-Based Education. Together, we examine the crisis in American education, what has caused the crisis, what our schools need to be like to fix the crisis, how to successfully transform to that very different kind of school, and what you can do to help your schools to transform. Chapter 4. How should we redefine roles for teachers, parents, and students? Dr. Reigeluth, in previous chapters of this series, you discussed student progress based on learning instead of time. You said that this continuous progress approach to learning helps learners who need more time because they don't accumulate gaps that make future learning more difficult. And you said it also helps faster learners because they don't have to wait for the class to move on. And most recently, you talked about many features of a school system that have to change in order for learning-based student progress to work well. That includes personalized learning, project-based learning with just-in-time tutorials, team-based learning, and self-directed learning. Now, I'd like to focus on how to make this all work. What would a teacher need to do differently?
Well, the teacher's role needs to change completely. With learning by doing and the focus on project-based learning, the teacher needs to do several different things. Design or select projects, help students choose or design their own projects, help students form teams to work on their projects, coach and motivate those teams during the projects, design or select just-in-time tutorials or arrange for other means of tutoring during the projects, and coach students' self-direction, reflection on their learning, and self-assessment. In essence, the teacher's role needs to change from sage on the stage to guide on the side. The other major role of the teacher is mentor, a person who's concerned with the whole child, all aspects of the child's development, in collaboration with the parents or other caregivers. As a parent, I had times when my wife and I were having a behavior problem with one or another of our children, and it really would have helped if we could have talked to their teacher to get their advice and assistance in dealing with them. And there were times when I was a high school teacher when it would have helped if I could have talked to a student's parents to get their help in dealing with the difficulty the student was having.
Collaboration between parents or other caregivers and teachers makes a huge difference in the student's experience. The student is being held accountable and knows that the caregivers and teachers are on the same page about how to support their needs. Teacher as mentor makes perfect sense, but how does it work?
Well, for teacher as mentor to work best, many new paradigm schools have each student stay with the same teacher for a developmental stage of their life, typically 3 to 4 years. So the teacher gets to know the student and parents or other caregivers well. Of course, the caregivers can select a different teacher if the current one is not a good match for the student. Having a caring adult outside the family is often a huge benefit to the student and can effectively address many development or behavior problems that would otherwise not be addressed and could otherwise result in problems with the law. There is some evidence this can reduce the crime rate. Related to both of these roles, guide on the side and mentor, is the teacher as learner. The teacher is not the know-it-all in this new paradigm. The teacher learns with the student, from the student, about the student, and for the student.
That's a very different role for the teacher, but it sounds like a more meaningful and enjoyable role. I'm guessing there's less teacher burnout?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, how does the role of the student change?
The student's role is active rather than passive. The student is much more self-directed, and the amount of self-direction increases over time with coaching by the teacher. The student plays a role in selecting what to learn, called learning targets, as we discussed in Chapter 3. While there are some basics that all students must learn, each student is allowed to choose some topics based on their individual interests and talents. Also, since any learning target can be reached through many different projects, the student can select projects to learn their targets. Students can control parts of their tutorials, such as when to see another demonstration or whether to use a competency or understanding in an easier or more difficult case. There are also different ways of demonstrating mastery that they can choose from, and there are different times and ways of reflecting on their learning and self-assessing their learning. This more active, self-directing role for students helps prepare them for effective lifelong learning.
That aligns really well with the increasing demand for knowledge workers who must continuously update their skills. Now, what about parents? Based on what you said earlier, it sounds like they would become more actively involved in their children's education in this new paradigm.
Yeah, this is so important. Collaboration between the teacher and caregivers makes both their jobs easier and improves student development. Yet it seldom happens in our current industrial age schools. While some caregivers are actively involved in helping their child with homework, many aren't, but would with a little encouragement, to the great benefit of their children. The change in the teacher's role helps such collaboration happen much more easily. It makes such a difference when caregivers encourage, support, and coach their child. For one thing, when the teacher finds that a student is misbehaving or struggling with something, they could suggest certain things the caregivers could do to help. And conversely, when the caregivers find that their child is misbehaving or struggling with something, they could ask the teacher for advice or help.
Oh, that sounds really exciting. Are there other roles that would change?
Yes, in fact, two more. One is the role of the community. Currently, it plays almost no role in the schools. And that's a real shame because the community can be a tremendous resource for student learning. Project-based learning greatly helps the community to play a more active role, especially when the projects are designed to improve the student's world. Students can conduct projects to improve their community on their own, or they can conduct projects in partnership with community organizations, from businesses to nonprofits to local government agencies, health providers, and more. So this doesn't just help the students learn. The students are also a resource for community betterment. What this does is to blur the boundary between school and community, which greatly benefits both.
Nice. And what is the other role that changes?
It is the role of technology. It becomes primarily a tool for the students, not primarily for teachers. We're familiar with PowerPoint presentations and software for teachers' grade books, which are great tools for the teacher in the industrial age paradigm of education. But technology can now provide immersive project environments through computer simulations, virtual reality headsets in the school or at home, but also through augmented reality headsets out in the community. Augmented reality can provide tools, information, and even tutorials while a project team is investigating the source of water pollution or the solutions to local traffic problems or health problems. Artificial intelligence, or AI, can power intelligent tutors embedded in all the projects. AI can also serve as a powerful tool for everything from writing reports to accessing information. It's really important that all students learn how to use AI effectively. It's even more important than it is for an accountant to learn how to use computer spreadsheets. The prompts you give to AI make a huge difference in the usefulness of its output. So prompt engineering is one of the most important competencies for students to learn. But immersive learning environments and AI are just two parts of the new roles for technology. Over a period of about 3 years, my research team at Indiana University developed detailed specifications for all the major roles technology should play in facilitating student learning. We identified 4 major functions. One is planning for student learning. This begins with helping students to identify career interests, then long-term learning goals to pursue those career interests, then short-term learning targets to pursue those goals, then sets of alternative projects to pursue those targets, then selection of teammates for each project, and more. A second function is instruction for student learning. As we've already discussed, technology should provide immersive project environments, coaching and tutorials during the projects, and access to tools for learning such as the internet, AI, and collaboration tools. Third is assessment for student learning. There are 2 functions for assessment. One is to help students learn, which is called formative assessment and includes coaching and feedback in tutorials. The other is to certify student learning, which is called summative assessment. It can certify mastery through the practice in the tutorials or through evaluation of other student demonstrations of their learning. The fourth function for technology's new role is record keeping for student learning. The technology system should keep track of each student's interests and long-term goals, learning targets mastered, badges earned, or micro-credentials achieved, along with some other information relevant to learning. Of course, these four functions, planning, instruction, assessment, and record keeping, must be seamlessly integrated in a single technology system. This system saves a lot of teacher time because it uses the student records to inform the planning. It uses the plans to inform the instruction. It uses the instruction, especially the practice until perfect in the tutorials, to inform the assessment. And the assessment data is automatically entered into the student's records, all without the teacher having to do any of it. It's like the accountant's computer spreadsheet for teachers. It frees the teacher from those mundane tasks to focus on more important issues regarding the student's full, well-rounded development and including parents and the community in the learning process. And this increases teacher satisfaction and reduces teacher burnout.
Wow. Technology sounds like such an important tool for making the new paradigm of education effective. It can accelerate student learning, help all students reach their potential, make the teacher's role more gratifying, and perhaps even lower the cost of education.
Yes, there's growing evidence to support all those claims. And these uses of technology actually increase the amount of meaningful in-person interaction well beyond what we have in our industrial age schools. What educators call high tech enables what they call high touch. And it's important to know that some of these changes in roles have already been made in over 1,000 schools across the country.
We spoke with Orly Friedman and Nikita Katan from the Redbridge School in San Francisco, California. Orly, how is the teacher's role different at Redbridge than at traditional schools?
So we have a role called Learning Guide, which is all about being that coach and mentor to students. They spend most of their days in one-on-one meetings with kids where they get to sit down and talk to each student about what's going on in their life, their friendship issues, their academics, their interests outside of school, so that every kid is known deeply. And then separately, we have a different role for content specialists. So they're the teachers in charge of leading small group instruction in reading, writing, math, and other subjects. We don't have these roles yet, but my hope is that as we grow as a school in the future, we will have an assessment team dedicated to designing, giving, and analyzing the data that we collect from students, and then also a project-based learning team that is designing the deep dive projects that students do multiple times a year.
Okay, so the guide on the side rather than the sage on the stage, and other support roles. And how is the student's role different?
The student role is different because it's less passive. That's really how Redbridge is designed. We're designing the school so that students are active participants in their own learning. So from day one, students are learning what a goal is. They are learning how to make a work plan and follow through on it. To move up in our school, you progress through the autonomy levels, and that is a student-driven process. So students advocate for their promotion to the next level, which means they have to continuously be thinking about, am I ready to move on to the next autonomy level? And that means, do I have the work habits? Am I able to keep my belongings organized? Am I getting all my work done each week? Am I comfortable asking for help from people?
We have times of the day when students are in a group learning environment in a small group class led by a content specialist. And even in those times of the day, the student's role is to be an active participant in their learning. We try to build in them the metacognition so that they actually feel a sense of ownership over the skills that they're building and the habits that they're building as a mathematician, as a communicator, in all of those ways. So students get to select when they feel like they have mastered a skill and are ready to demonstrate that mastery of it. And so they aren't just taking the test when the teacher says and how the teacher says.
That's a very active role that represents a much healthier mindset about learning and school. How is the parent's role different?
So we don't want parents to be asking kids at the end of the day, did you get all your work done? What do you have to do this afternoon? We want parents to be supportive and help kids make space for their work. And also, if kids do need something from their parents, that they're there for them. But ultimately, we want students to take as much ownership as they can for their learning. And so we don't require too much of parents.
There's a book called The Self-Driven Child, from which we derive a lot of our ideas of what the role of a parent should be in a student's education. And so one way to think about it from the ideas in that book is we talk to parents about viewing themselves as consultants for their students rather than being demanders all the time in terms of their education. And so they are there to create a safe space to ask students questions, but they're really kind of there as consultants to help their students think about their own learning and motivate them to be those self-driven learners.
So more of a support role than a commanding role. And how is the role of technology different in your school?
We try to be very deliberate about when and how students are using technology, but we don't use technology to teach students new skills. That generally still is happening in the classroom through teacher-led instruction, but we use technology for them to go practice and reinforce the skills that they've been introduced to, and also to support them working at their own pace. We know that some kids need to see something a lot more times. Some students can see it just once and are ready to move on. And technology really allows us to differentiate in that way. And then we also use technology to help students plan their weeks and their time and to communicate with parents so that parents have a view into what students are working on at school.
We know students are going to be surrounded by technology, whatever the future of the world looks like. And so we have built into our curriculum places where students get to really think about what it means to be a user of various technologies, what the benefits and downfalls can be, how to use technology in a responsible manner. For instance, in our earliest cohort, Autonomy Level 1, which includes students roughly 5, 6, and 7 years old, our learning guide does this excellent lesson on the impact of when you're on the internet, what all the different pop-ups and how it impacts your focus and attention. And she really brings it to life in a very concrete way for students. So they start to understand at a very early age what sort of impact technology can have on our focus and attention span as well. So that's just one example of how we try to teach them to be responsible and well-informed users of technology.
So the students are the major users of the technology, whereas in the traditional teacher-centered model, teachers are the major users. Thanks so much for sharing your experience about how to make the personalized, competency-based paradigm of education successful in overcoming the crisis in education today. Let's hear from Jim Wortman and Nick Ryan in the Minnesota New Country School. Nick, how is the teacher's role different in your school?
I really think it's been more helpful for me over the years to start to think of my role as more coach than teacher. I'm not pulling together curriculum for classes, and like Jim's really good at figuring out individual motivation for students and then how to kind of leverage that to help them meet their goals. But then you've also got a group that you're responsible for, your advisory, which is like 17 students. And so then you're really looking at like, how do I bring these students together as an advisory group and kind of build some culture around that and help them help each other be successful and feel included.
Another aspect of a changed role in teachers is the sage on the stage versus the side. Maybe 20% of our time is that directed instruction, if that maybe once a week we're maybe doing an experience with students where we're directing what the topic is. More often than not, we are working by their side to determine what they would like to do for a project and then helping guide that project. One of the misconceptions, I think, with project-based learning is that you have to be self-motivated to go there. That's what we're up to. We're trying to teach that motivation. Yet initiative is the word that we've been using a whole lot lately. We're trying to teach initiative.
Great. And how has the student's role changed?
I feel like it's a lot more active than it probably would be than in a traditional setup.
Definitely, the word agency comes to mind. Students have so much agency here. You have the opportunity to design your curriculum, design your product, to a large degree, lay out what you're going to be doing during parts of the day. Learning motivator is still credit. Like, am I advancing in my personal learning plan towards moving on to the next grade through credit attainment? They have to see where they're at and, again, use the initiative part to actually self-advocate quite a bit. That is the one thing the thing that I see students having to get good at here is self-advocacy.
What about the parent's role? Is that any different from in a traditional school?
We at least force them to be somewhat more involved, I guess. I feel like I think conferences like at a traditional school are still kind of like teacher sits in the classroom for set amount of hours. You can show up and come check in with them. Here it's like we schedule them three times a year. You're coming in, we're sitting down for an hour, parents and students. We're talking through what's the plan at the start of the year. All right, we're 2 months into the school year. What have we seen so far? How do we adjust that? Towards the end of the school year, like, what do we need to do to finish strong? And so we kind of force parents, I think, to be a little more involved in that aspect. It's just kind of a team. We're all in this together. You can't just send your kid here and then take your hands off.
As advisors, also establishing a deeper relationship with the parent. And we have that student as our primary responsibility the whole day as opposed to for 1 hour. So we notice what's going on with the children so often, with their child. So oftentimes we're like, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing the same thing at home? Yep. Okay, what's working for you at home? What's working for me at school? And let's blend it. So the kids know that we, as parents and as educators, we have a keen insight into who they are.
Got it. Then there's the issue of technology. Does technology play a different role in your school from a traditional school?
I think our students are using it more to kind of develop their own projects and track their work versus just like curriculum delivery tools.
Oftentimes our best projects, the projects that wow us, are projects that are developed. Conceptual part of it might be developed using technology, but the actual product is something that is constructed. So it's really cool. They're learning to use technology purposefully and then learning that real world skill. They're very interested in pursuing design and building stuff as a career. So it really fits in well. Feels like students can get bored with technology pretty quick, or they get into patterns with them. They're not creating the wow factors. So technology is often just one part of the product creation.
So it sounds like at the Minnesota New Country School, everyone's role looks different. Teachers guide learners instead of dictating to them. Students develop agency. Parents step in as real partners, and technology serves as a purposeful tool rather than a distraction to the learning process. It's a model that's less about consuming information and more about everyone shaping students' learning experiences together. This model shows us what's possible when learning becomes a shared responsibility. Before we end this chapter, listen closely for a special offer. Listeners of this podcast receive 20% off Dr. Reigeluth's book, Vision and Action, with the exclusive code VA20 when you order directly from solutiontree.com. This offer is only available for a limited time. Visit solutiontree.com to order your copy today. We are deeply grateful to everyone who supported our GoFundMe campaign, including Fred O'Neill, Unak Beck, Olga Morrow, and Ji-Yeon Lee. The campaign is called Help End America's Education Crisis Now, and the link's in the show notes. Donate today to help us keep the podcast available to all. Thanks so much to Dr. Reigeluth, as well as our guests from the Redbridge School, Orly Friedman and Nikita Katan, and from the Minnesota New Country School, Nick Ryan and Jim Wortman. That's it for Chapter 4 of The Education Crisis, What It Is and How to Fix It. I'm Tembi Duncan, and remember, the future of education is in our hands.